Welcome to the Women and Money Empowerment Show. My name is Yulin Lee, and I am your host. In these episodes, you will hear my heart-to-heart conversations with women from all walks of life, sharing their wisdom and their journey to success. I hope through these stories, you will find inspirations and affirmation that ordinary people like you and me, we can achieve extraordinary results and live an extraordinary life. Now, let's dive into today's show. Welcome, Melinda. Thank you so much for coming on to the Women and Money Empowerment Show.
Hi, Yulin. It's a pleasure. It's so fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah. I am super excited to have you on this show, and it's because of the specific topic that we're going to discuss today, and it is about speaking. I am an extrovert. So speaking for me feels pretty comfortable and natural. But I know not everyone feels this way, right? There are plenty of people who don't like to speak. But, even I think for people like myself who are extrovert, who feel comfortable speaking, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're speaking effectively.
Right.
And so there is a huge, I know there's a huge science behind this whole speaking thing. And I think it's almost an art, right? That it's a craft that we have to, learn and build and refine. And so that is why I'm so excited to have you here today, because, you're an expert in this domain. And so I would love for you to share with our audiences about really how to tap into and, step into our own power through speaking. And so before we dive into this, though, I would love for you to maybe just take a couple of minutes to introduce yourself to our audience and let everyone know who you are and what is your journey, and who is Melinda Lee.
Thank you. It is my passion and my honor to help leaders, corporate leaders, entrepreneurs to really elevate and speak from their heart, speak from an authentic voice. And we'll go into what that means. I'm passionate about this, not because I was born out of the womb, actually I'm more of an introvert. I learned to be more of an extrovert, use more extrovert tendencies because I knew that it was a skill that was really important. I know that it's a skill of leadership. I know that it's a skill of high impact and high influence. My background is my ancestry. The way I learned to speak was watching my grandmother, who was the fourth concubine. So when she was 25 years old, she was sold into a marriage. I mean, that's really typical in Asian communities, Asian culture. She was sold into a marriage. She listened to her husband, who was 35 years her senior. And also 3 wives. Wow. That's my grandmother. It's not generations away. It's my grandmother. So she had no voice. Right. And then there's my mom. She raised 4 kids, ran 2 restaurants, and things all went wrong. And she got yelled at by workers, by colleagues, by my dad, and she just didn't speak up. She was very harmonious. She liked to keep the peace. So she held a lot in. And so when I went to corporate, I felt like that was me. I was more of a harmonious person. I just do my work and bury my head and work really hard, right? And then I'm going to get promoted. Well, that did not happen. I got an email. I remember the day that I saw a new hire gets promoted before me. I was so devastated. I thought, wait, they're not seeing my work. How could this be possible? This is not right. I'm putting in all this work, and yet someone gets passed up. I get passed up for promotion. And then a week later, my manager walks in and says, "Hey, Melinda, would you like to speak in front of 30 executive leaders?" My heart was racing. I thought, who am I? Who am I to say something?
Right.
But I knew I needed to. I knew in my heart of hearts, I meant to do more. And so I got the tools, the training, and I spoke in front of the managers, and I was confident. And then not only did I do that, but I also found my purpose. I know with the truth of everything in me, that this is what I'm here to do. And this is what I've helped executives do. And this is why I can continue to do this work.
That's really amazing because, I've known you for a little bit and I know what you do, but I didn't know the family background that kind of inspired and really propelled you to find something that is meaningful, to not only maybe for you to break that lineage, not speaking up, but also at the same time, just creating a bigger impact in this world. So, wow. Okay. All right. So let's now dive into speaking. So when somebody feels really nervous about speaking, kind of like what you said earlier the first time, what would be your advice to those people who, maybe some parts in the back of their mind that they are thinking secretly that, well, maybe I would love to be a speaker one day. Or maybe I would love to go do a presentation on something, but you know what? It's just too daunting right now. Feels too scary. What would you say to those people?
The interesting thing is a lot of people, even the most confident people, still have some nerves, some type of butterflies. And I think whether you are really afraid or whether you are that still confident person, I think we want to ask ourselves, what are those thoughts that are going inside of our head as we're speaking? Like, are there thoughts? Is there an inner critic? Some people will, on the extreme, will say, I don't belong here. What am I going to say? Do I have all the information? And then some people on the opposite side who appear very confident can be like, they better listen to me. I got to prove that I'm right. I got to put myself out there. I'm going to prove all of them that my opinion matters. So on both sides, I feel like it's noticing those thoughts first and noticing where they might have come from. Because a lot of times we think they are a part of us, and yet we have built up these thoughts from somewhere. They have come from a certain part in our lives. So we come to this world, we have experiences that may not have been the best. And then we develop these thoughts. Maybe your mom or your dad said, you don't know how to do this math. You're so stupid. And then, so what we carry on is, I'm stupid. I don't have all the information. I'm not the smartest. I'm not smart enough. That's a common one that I hear. And so they bring these thoughts into the presentation. On the opposite side of, I need to prove myself, that type of personality, they might have had past moments where the dad was always out there and not around, right? Not available. So then this type of energy is like, hey, I need to prove that I'm enough. I need to prove that I'm worthy of your attention. So thinking about where these thoughts come from and are they present when you're speaking, especially if it's a high stakes communication, are you really present? Are you really free from these thoughts and so present with your audience that you don't, if you're feeling nervous and if you're feeling butterflies, most likely you're going to also have thoughts running in the background. I call it the inner critic, self-judgment, self-doubt. And then, so if that's still running in the background and it is very intense, we want to take a brief, like some reflection on it, because most people will just, to prepare, they'll write out what they want to talk about, what they're going to say, and then they don't really do the mindset work that is necessary to really be present.
Right. Yeah. And, it's so interesting, like listening to you right now, everything you said is very much, I can also mirror the same talk when we talk about working in people's finances.
Right.
Even though we are doing the work with their financial numbers and planning and all of that, but the more critical work is actually the work on ourselves. And that shows up in, whether it's a negative self-talk or doubt or shame. And so, listening to you, I'm like, yeah, that's right. And so it just, again, reminds me of whatever area in our life that we want to get better at. End of the day, it's actually not that area in itself. It's really us, how we can grow ourselves so that we can actually step into that.
Right. And that is so true. It isn't, there's parallel, because we know that if we adjust our finances, if we adjust our talk, we can have patterns and the old negative self-talk that will bring us right back.
Yeah.
It'll derail us from all of the planning and the work that we want to, and our achievements and our goals.
Right, right. Yeah. And when you say, like paying attention to kind of the thoughts that go through our head if we had to speak it. And as you were saying now, I was kind of reflecting back like what thoughts did, go through my mind. And I remember I've spoken quite a few places. And like you said, like every single time, no matter how prepared I feel, um, there's always that butterfly. There's always, right before you get on the stage, like, oh my God, right? And the thought that goes through my head that pushes me out to do it anyway is that, well, the more I get nervous, and the reason I get nervous is what if I screw up? And so the thought that goes through my head is, well, the more I get scared about what if I screw up, the more likely I'm going to screw up. And so
100%.
that's how I push myself. It's like I just have to go out and do, and actually I will have a better chance of succeeding than worrying about screwing up.
Yes, definitely. If you keep on mulling around in it and thinking about it, and then more likely you will screw it up.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so
And
you
then
do the right thing.
right. And then the other thing that like you mentioned, I also learned it from I think at some other training that I was at. I forgot which one exactly, but someone said this and it really registered with me, and I've been using that for myself. And that's not even just speaking, but even like when I go into a coaching session or something, that I always I always do that kind of a mental preparation. And then I always tell myself, I am not here to prove anything. I have nothing to prove, but I have everything to share. And so if I walk in with that, and I do that for myself every single time wherever I go, and or even like I said, a coaching session, like you said, I'm not here to try to prove that I'm the smartest or I know it all, because I don't. But I'm just here to share, and that just takes that whole weight pressure.
Right.
At least,
Yeah.
that's how it works for me.
Yeah, no, it's true, because I think when people are in the spotlight, they have a tendency to want to prove and make it all perfect and exact and right. And that's so much pressure it's not possible. We're not perfect. And so the more we can let down our guard, the more you're actually going to be. My whole journey and my goal is to help people feel free to be themselves, like truly themselves. Because if you're putting up a guard, most people will say, I have to get it right. Everything has to be perfect. I got to say the right words. And then what happens is we become a robot. We become so confined. And then we're not ourselves. You'll notice sometimes people, as soon as the spotlight comes on, they become somebody else, because they're fine. They're like, oh gosh, I have to have it right. And so it's like they can't relax. We have to relax. Get them more into feeling flow, into it's okay if I mess this up. It's okay. And that's the challenge of allowing ourselves to mess up, allowing ourselves to just be our vulnerable self. That will ease and round out the edges, so that we can be more authentic and be able to be really safe to be us. But that comes from us first, because if we don't allow ourselves the safety to be ourselves, and we feel that we're going to be judged, then nobody else is going to give it to us.
Right.
We're blocking our own self. And so I love that you're able to like say that if I have nothing to prove, if I'm here just to serve my audience, see what they need. The challenge is, I think sometimes when people are so nervous, it's challenging to cross that border, to cross that boundary. It's easier said than done. So let's say if they have a lot of their inner critic and their self-doubt is really high, you can say, I can tell myself verbally, be relaxed, breathe. But then what happens, right? As soon as you get on, everything changes. That's because the doubt or some past moments are still blocking your success. It's still blocking you from being the present moment, because you're going into fight, flight, or freeze.
Right. So in those scenarios, I'm just curious, in those scenarios, if this person that you just described is your client, how do you help them?
Yeah, so I do, I have private sessions where I help actually define what are the past moments that are still blocking them. And so I'll give you an example. I had he was an amazing, intelligent, he was an attorney already. He passed the bar, so smart, but he was working as a paralegal. because he didn't want to go in front of the judge or the jury. He couldn't do it. He was too afraid, blocked himself. And there was a public defender position opened. He applied for it. And then he went in. He was nervous, afraid, shaking. His exact words, my voice was shaking, my body is shaking. And of course, he didn't get the position. But what happened is that stirred him to then work with me. And then he hired me. And then what we did was we did some private session work where we do find out exactly those moments. And then we do a couple of statements. So we say what needed to be said at the time. Think about some of the past moments that have been not so pleasant. All your body needs to do is say some statements. I was hurt. I'm angry. So this person was angry at his father. Angry at his father, did not like it. And then when you start to say the words, your nervous system actually gets neutralized. It actually calms down, unravels. And then every session you start to feel freer and freer. Because if I'm going to give you tools to be confident, if you have all this self-doubt, it doesn't land. Your body doesn't change because you fully don't believe it.
Right,
so
right.
I need to have you fully believe it.
Right, right. So
all
it's
the
not
tools and techniques come in.
right, right.
Yeah.
So it's not real confidence, right?
It's not real confidence. It might work for the specific session or the specific talk. And that's what people do when they're practicing and practicing. They're really putting a band-aid, which works maybe 1 or 2 times. But then you'll notice if you have to do a speaking on the spot or you have to do something quickly, it's not real. You're like, oh my gosh, I have no time. Do I have everything, all the information? And then their inner critic starts to go haywire again because they still haven't truly gotten rid of all that doubt that was there from the root from beginning. And most of it is from 0 to 10 years old, right? Around that age, we've developed these thoughts. And so we just need to address those thoughts. And once we address the thoughts, then he went into the next, I mean, they don't come very often, but for him, thank goodness, the public defender position opened. He applied, he wrote a testimonial. He told me, oh my God, I didn't want the whole interview to end. I had so much to say. I had so much confidence, and he got the position. And so I was so happy for him. But that's the change that can happen really fast once you really go in and do that inner work, the mindset work, and then you add the tools on top of that. Because I can give you tools all day, but if you fully don't have the full body belief, if those self-doubt is still there, it's going to be just their band-aids.
So you do these, kind of exactly like I do. It would just work with them on the deeper level first.
Yeah.
Through whatever the blockage that they have to begin with. Because unless you get through that, it doesn't matter what I teach them about how to invest, because they will self-sabotage. They will do things that
sabotage.
Yeah.
I just got off a session. I just worked with a team just now, and we work with the personality assessments, and there's different personalities, right? There's a personality that uses more nurturing and caring. And then there's others that are very demanding, direct, and that energy is directly opposite. And I'm encouraging the people with the nurturing energy to be more direct, to be more demanding. And they're thinking in their head, no, I can't do that, because they're so overwhelming. Some of these very high powered, direct energy, like, have you ever worked with and talked to them? And we do the best we can. I say, be direct, don't waffle, right? Have your points, be clear and be concise. But if there's doubt in their head, it's going to be very hard for them to do it. We have to work with something, so we do the best we can. But if you have that energy that normally you feel you're very nurturing and caring, just notice when you have to go and talk to someone that's very direct and demanding.
Right. And I actually, it's very interesting that you brought that up, because I'm actually, like, by nature, I'm more of the kind of the nurturing type. And one of the things that helped me to deal with the situation that you just mentioned, like, when I talk, even though I'm speaking very directly, but I'm not the abrasive type. So I try to be soft and everything. And I'm not a very I wouldn't call myself the best salesman, because I feel like, oh, I'd be too pushy and all of that.
Right.
One thing that I learned from someone else that helped me kind of work through some of that is to actually understand that, the reason we want to be nurturing is because we want to be nicer to others. We want to serve others.
Right.
But if I'm dealing with somebody who's more direct,
Right.
I'm actually not serving them
Right.
when I'm being too soft and too nurturing.
Correct.
Because the way they want to be served is for you to be direct. And so
Correct.
that really helped me shift my way of thinking is even though I feel like this is my natural way of being, because I feel this is how I, take care of other people.
Right.
But just acknowledging that other people may actually want to be taken care of differently.
Exactly. Right. That's the key, right? So that's always knowing our audience. When you go in, we tend to communicate in the way we want to be communicated, or how we communicate, and know that there's lots of different communication styles. And if that person wants to be communicated in a more direct, concise way, then that's helpful to know. And then you go in with a more direct, concise communication style.
I know nothing about the professional speaking work. But if I think about that as kind of an outsider, I look at there are like different components to speaking, right? There's the kind of our physical posture, there's how we carry our voice, messages that we send, and then just the whole delivery, how it's done. Maybe as someone who's professional at this, are these the areas that you work with people, or are there other areas that I haven't touched on?
Yeah, no, those are areas that I do work on. And there's a couple layers here. So when we are genuinely feeling authentic and feeling safe, then our body language tends to be very natural and actually just where we need to be. And the more we try to tell people, stand up straight, or then it starts to get in their mind. So where I work is I do help them to feel comfortable. And once they feel very comfortable, then they naturally will be more comfortable, and their hand gestures are comfortable, eye contact is comfortable. But I just want to leverage that a little bit more. I help dial it up a little bit more. So some people will tend to not use as much. And so to be more effective and engaging, we do want to use what you already have, but leverage it even more. So I'll say, hey, use a little bit more hand. You're already doing it. So just a little bit more, a little bit bigger, more eye contact. That's actually very helpful, important to make that connection with your audience. Eye contact, tonality, voice. If it's too high, we want to be more direct and commanding, then we want to take down the voice. But that is more authentic. When you are very clear with your message, that directness of your voice will come naturally. But sometimes if there's doubt there, that the voice will not be congruent with their message.
Right.
And if there's doubt, my hands are not congruent with my message.
Right. So you brought up a really interesting thing about the tonality. And one of the things I notice, especially with women, since we talk about women empowerment here, is that when women speak, we often go to this really high pitch.
Right.
And so can you elaborate on that? Like, what is the psychology? What does that do in a conversation or in a presentation in terms of how people receive it?
Right.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah. High pitch, if you want to, that's actually helpful to elicit questions, because you're questioning. Usually is that correct? Or that is correct, right? Is that correct? Then your inflection is high, then that means you're opening up for question. But if that's not what you want, then you're sounding like you're questioning yourself. And then everybody will feel like you're questioning yourself, and they'll question you. And so the upward inflection is more used for questions. And so if you're not aware of that, and some people will do that because subconsciously they are questioning themselves.
Right.
Subconsciously, I am doubting myself. Is that correct?
Right.
This way? Let's do it that way. Like, and then they're not really sure because they're not sure themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was also thinking about more of the pitch. And actually, I do that myself too sometimes. And I don't do it intentionally. But it was actually one of the previous show. And my husband pointed out to me, and he said, well, when you start greeting your guests, your voice, your pitch just went up. I'm like, really? Because for me, I'm just excited.
Right.
But at the same time, I wonder why I do that, you know? And certainly like when I say, hi, Melinda, it's so good to have, like you
Got
see,
it.
like my
Got
my
it.
my pitch went up a
Yes.
notch,
Yes.
not like when I'm talking now, right?
Right. Right.
And I always wondered about that because we definitely don't see as much of that with men.
Right.
And whether it's something that we should really watch out for because it is to our detriment as
Mhm.
women, trying to stay in our own power,
Mhm.
versus, well, maybe it's not it's a non-issue. It's just how men and women are different. And what do you think? I would love to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, I think depending on your situation, depending on your environments, like for this is a podcast, you can be excited. It's fine. But then noticing if you are wanting to command a presence and if you want to be directive, that pitch is not going to land as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hey, let's do it this way. Hi, let's do it. And we're excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then depending on your audience, it might not be as commanding as directive.
Right.
So you want to be cognizant of your audience, cognizant of the message that you're trying to send, because the pitch is going to send a more excited pitch and joyful, cheery, versus a commanding, direct. And so I think that the power is our choice. And being aware of which pitch you're using and depending on the audience. I think they're both useful because sometimes even in negotiations, the key negotiators will use a high pitch just to lighten the load.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Hey, let's do it this way. Come on, just have fun with this.
Yeah. So again, it comes down to being intentional
Yes.
and use it at a time when it's to your advantage.
Yes. 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 So
So,
there's.
so do you, yeah.
Mhm.
So do you notice like major key differences when you're working with people in the corporate world on the speaking, aspect of their professional life? Do you notice any main differences between men and women in this area when you're coaching them? I'm just curious.
That we all have doubt. Like even the high powered, they're good at covering it and they're good at compartmentalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Both men and women.
Yeah.
And I think that even if you compartmentalize, and if you're finding yourself stuck or if you're finding yourself not going in the direction that you want, I think that's when it's time to reflect on
Mm-hmm.
these things. But we all have them. We all carry whatever doubt it is that we have, even at whatever level, whatever gender, and that we have opportunity to grow and to further ourselves, to expand. Our communication is always, I always see it as a continuum. There's always more room to grow and develop. But gender and with both, I see challenges and opportunities with both female and male. I think, female, I do work with primarily more female, but I also work with men and women, but they have the same challenges.
Okay.
Similar challenges. Yeah.
Okay.
It's really fascinating. You would think maybe women have a bit more difficult, but it's not.
I have no idea. So I don't want to assume anything, but
Right.
The reason I ask is because in my line of work,
Yeah.
I do specialize in working with women.
Right.
And this is not to say that men don't face similar challenges.
Right.
They certainly do. But I do think in the field of money and finance, women could use a little bit more support and encouragement and everything else, just because of centuries of programming that
Right.
the role is to take care of the family, and money is a men's job. And so that's why I asked the question, because again, in my line of work, I find there's a very clear distinction between how men and women deal with money. But
Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah.
I think that, when as you're talking, I think that men have opportunity, and this is why I say it's pretty balanced, because the men that are communicating nowadays, they're not as empathetic, or they want to be more heart-centered. And so that is their extreme area of growth, where they can be, when they can let down the egos. Because a lot of times right now, the great speakers are the authentic ones, the ones that are just people. But a lot of times men will think that I need to, prove my opinion. I have to be right. And the women. But then I think that that's where they have an extreme area of growth. Well, no matter what level you are. And women, on the other hand, like, we do have a lot of the programming. We do have more of a tendency to doubt and want to, hold back on our opinion. And so there's some room for growth over there too.
So what would be like one thing that our audience can take away from this conversation, listening to this conversation, and also just from a professional like you, in terms of again, stepping into our own power through speaking? What would be that one takeaway for them?
Allow yourself the safety to be yourself, right? Know your audience, and how you can possibly connect with the audience, and then allow yourself to be yourself.
Okay.
And if you're really afraid, work with somebody to work through some of the doubts, some of the nervousness, so that you can get your message across. But know that you do matter. Like, your voice matters. We need to hear, especially if you've been holding back, especially if you hold back your opinions. Your voice matters. We need to hear more people with that voice, in the work world, in the professional world, corporate, and also entrepreneurial.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you recommend people, so for example, if I, want to do some speaking and I'm preparing, and, like you said earlier, practice, really kind of also just know your stuff as a way to build your confidence. When I'm practicing, does it help to practice it with, friends and family, people around me, for their feedback? Or is it better not? Because sometimes their feedback can also kind of mess you up. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud here, right?
Right. No, it's true. Yeah, I write out what you're going to say and practice only the key points, not every word. So you got to say, make a conscious decision, because people, when they practice, will try to practice every word and script. So make a conscious decision to just only remember the key points. Then practice from that place. Let go of the script. I'm just going to remember the key, and then, because that'll allow you to also have freedom to include other things. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fluid. And then, yes, practice in front of people, but then only practice in front of people you really value their opinion. Not every, right. So the people that you really trust their opinion, then otherwise I wouldn't include too many people. Like you said, they might mess you up. You're like, is that really true? And maybe someone who has has done it before, knows the audience very well. That would be even more helpful.
Yeah. Because, again, the reason I'm asking is I'm just hearing so much parallels in your line of work and mine. And one of the things that I see all the time is people getting investment advice or financial advice from their, family and friends, and with all the good intention that they have, but still they're not financial professionals.
Right.
And so they can share what they have done, which may or may not work for you. And so I see there's a lot of that happening, that sometimes the advice they get may actually hurt them without even knowing it.
Right.
That's why I'm asking the question.
So true. They have good intentions, but it might not be the best for you in the specific moment.
Right.
Yeah.
This question I always ask everyone on my show. What is your definition of success?
Success is my happiness, in a nutshell. And it's fueled by my relationships, by how I feel about myself. The more I love myself, how much I love myself, noticing if I'm going down the critical path, like of self-doubt and negative feedback, then I, that day I want to take more time and add some self-care for myself. So success is fueled by my self-love, my relationships, finances, how healthy I feel. Yeah, my spirituality.
Right.
Yeah, how much am I in alignment with all these things?
Right. And then, so how does money show up for you in your life?
Money is is a beautiful, it's everywhere. I've been very, I didn't, growing up, my parents lost a lot. And so we had it and then we lost it. And I felt like I had to work really hard to get it back. And I think that followed me for a long time, actually. And now only have I finally made that intention to, I'm not gonna work hard just to have the money. That's not what I want, how I want to live my life. And so since doing that, I feel like I have more money. Just it is everywhere. It's just how do I, yeah, I think it would just, how do I just create more abundance for me, for people around me, and yeah,
So less pressure.
less pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Okay, so I know we're like going on for quite some time now, and
Oh, it's so fast. That happened so fast.
I
That
know,
was
like, right? I mean, time always flies so fast when we're like so enjoying, my conversations with my guests. So before we sign off, if people who are interested in learning more about you
yeah.
and your services, and where do they find you? How do they find you?
They can email me, Melinda at speakinflow.com. That's
Mhm.
my email address. Or you can go to my website, https www.speakinflow.com.
Speakinflow.com.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I love our conversation, and I just loving the fact that I'm finding so many parallels in
Yeah.
your work and mine as well.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well,
Uh,
thank you again, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Women and Money Empowerment Show. If you ever have doubt for moments about yourself, your capability, or your worthiness, please remember to keep coming back to these stories and lean in. Draw the wisdom and strength from these incredible women and know that you also have what it takes to live a fulfilling life. Until next time, have a fabulous day.